Finally, here to represent the judges and present Christopher Soto in absentia with the 2017 Freedom Plow Award is the brilliant multidisciplinary performance artist, visual artist, writer, and director, Holly Bass.
Hello, everyone. It's always an honor to be in a room full of committed and dedicated poets, and always an honor to represent Split This Rock. And on behalf of the full judges panel, it's my pleasure to read this statement. In his bio, Christopher Soto, aka Loma, describes himself as a queer Latinx punk poet and prison abolitionist. Loma's proclaimed identities challenge us to think about the seemingly incompatible inhabiting one body and working from that one body to write searing, critical poems that alter the impact of lived reality. In the prose poem, Rework, Loma writes, "There was a manner by which the oppression was normalized, by which the feeling of liberation was long forgotten, by which everything revolved around capital. But you could no longer afford to stay in your father's home. There was no rent control, and some nights you thought that he would kill you in your sleep. Language is where the tongue fails itself over and over again." This excerpt is much more than a traumatic personal narrative. The oppositional nature of things is laid bare. Oppression to normal, oppression to liberation, capital to liberation, rent control to capital, no rent control to death. Loma calls our attention to the impossibility of existence with the experience of trauma, and yet one survives. There's also an insistence on the failure of language in the face of these layers of lived experience. The poem is riddled with layers in which the incompatible happens simultaneously. And how do we speak these things, the poem seems to ask? What words can struggle an approximation? Christopher Soto's multifarious work bridges the gap between literary activism and organizing, as the very poetry he writes is often investigative of the cultural and structural barriers of toxic masculinity, misogyny, heterosexism, racism, and xenophobic nationalism. In his literary activist work, Loma creates spaces for the intersection of identities to be expressive, such as in Nepantla, a journal dedicated to queer poets of color, where Loma is editor. He is also a co-founder of the Undocupoets campaign, whose mission is to promote the work of undocumented poets and raise consciousness about the structural barriers that are faced in the literary community, and to support all poets, regardless of immigration status. We exist as poets in an era of egregious politics, an era where hashtag Muslim ban and hashtag build a wall flash across our iPhones built in China by other poets like Xu Liji, the 24-year-old migrant factory worker who committed suicide by jumping out of the residential dormitory owned by his employer Foxconn. Social media allows us to be anywhere at any time, to trace social upheavals by hashtags, to be there from our living rooms. The poet, the poem, the iPhone, the world were all articulated within the invisible visibleness of a global north perpetually attempting to dominate the global south. It's a poetics and an economics of consumerism, migrant labor, and the deep loss of empathy and agency. And it's a poetic response to these arenas that we find in Loma's own poetry, dragging out the underbellies we refuse to look at unless we're forced to look. Of the many deeply engaged poets who were nominated for the Freedom Plow Award, we have chosen Christopher Soto as this year's winner. It was far from an easy decision. What is happening in the United States at this moment has re-energized a bounty of magnificent projects to address the almost daily injustices that flash across lighted screens. The assaults upon the environment, our bodies, who we choose to love, how we choose to live, and where we choose to sell our labor power. These and so many more areas of our lives are seemingly under attack at the present moment. And we were deeply heartened by the many, many poets currently working against these assaults. One of these poets, Christopher Soto, inspires us with the depth and variety of his engagements. In addition to his work with the UndocuPoets campaign, he's helped to establish Amazon Literary Partnership grants for undocumented writers. These fearless and necessary contributions, defiant in the face of 45-era hatred and bigotry, make Loma a model Freedom Plow citizen. We are pleased to grant him this award on behalf of Split This Rock. And I'll just hold it up so you can see it. And now we'll hear virtually from Christopher.
Hello, my name is Christopher Soto, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you tonight to celebrate Split This Rock and literary activism and to formally accept the Freedom Plow Award. As I'm recording this message, I'm in my home in New York City, but on that night, you'll be seeing this message. I'll be in Colorado with Janine Joseph, Javier Zamora, and Marcelo Hernandez Castillo of the UndocuPoets campaign. We'll be giving a reading and lecture at the University of Colorado and brainstorming about the next steps of the UndocuPoets campaign. It'll actually be the first time that the four of us have all met together in person. That being said, the group would kill me if I didn't attend. Then I have parentheses and it says, haha, JK, they wouldn't kill me, but it would be really lame if I canceled on them. Continuing. It is with a deep and heartfelt thank you that I'd like to acknowledge Ocean Vyung, who nominated me for this award and continues to be a dear friend and supportive poet. It is with thanks that I acknowledge the judges who have spent time deliberating, Holly Bass, Don Lundy Martin, and 2015 Freedom Plow Award recipient Mark Nowak. Thank you for seeing me, or even better, thank you for acknowledging the work that needs to be done in the literary community. Thank you for helping to push us forward in our efforts of literary activism. My gratitude also goes out to Sarah Browning, Kamisha Jones, Simone Roberts, Tiana Truna, and everyone else at Split This Rock who has made this award possible and this gala possible. Also thanks to Cross Currents Foundation for sponsoring the award. Lastly, thanks to my dad and mom, my sisters and cousins and friends and political activists and poets who have written the words that I live by. Thank you to the poets who have spoken to me through their books when I looked around and saw no other voices but my own. Books have filled the most horrendous silences of my life, and books have quieted my spirits when the world was too loud. In accepting this honor from Split This Rock, I wish there was a way to further decentralize the I. How do, quote, I, as the speaker, properly acknowledge that this award is not about me or even about the work that I've accomplished. This award is about the resilience and audacity and living a life that does not bow down to systems of oppression which have directly or indirectly told us to take a seat. This award is about my mother crossing the border from El Salvador into Mexico, then into the United States alone before she was 17. This is about the years that she spent undocumented, the years that she fought for her GED, then nursing certificate, and how after work and taking care of her children, she would go to night school at the community college. For years, she went to school, attempting to eventually get her associate's degree. And throughout my high school, my mother and I would work on our English homework together. This award is about her persistence and her selflessness. This award is about all undocumented peoples, all trans and gender nonconforming people, all people of color, all survivors of domestic violence and poverty and homelessness. The ways that we have been shut out of the literary community, often not able to see ourselves in literary works. This award is about how we survive and thrive from the fringes of society. So thank you for recognizing in me not just some poems or campaigns. Thank you for recognizing the struggles and perseverance of the communities that I represent and fight alongside. Thank you for recognizing our lives as worthy of being celebrated. And so I was told to talk for about 10 minutes, some prose and some poems. So maybe this is where I transition into some poems, if that's okay. I'd like to start reading a poem called Won't You Celebrate With Me by Lucille Clifton. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into, a kind of life. I had no model, born in Babylon, both non-white and woman. What did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between starshine and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. And this last poem that I'll read with you is a poem of my own. It's called All the Dead Boys Look Like Me, written for Orlando. Last time I saw myself die is when police killed Jesse Hernandez, a 17-year-old brown queer who was sleeping in their car. Yesterday, I saw myself die again. 50 times I died in Orlando. And I remember reading Dr. Jose Esteban Munoz before he passed away. I was studying at NYU, where he was teaching, where he wrote shit that made me feel like a brown queer survival was possible. But he didn't survive. And now, on the dance floor, in my chest, in the restroom, there are another 50 bodies that look like mine and are dead. And I've been marching for Black lives and talking about police brutality against Native communities too, for years now. But this morning I feel it. I really feel it again. How can we imagine ourselves, we being Black, Native, today brown people, how can we imagine ourselves when all the dead boys look like us? Once, I asked my nephew where he wanted to go to college, what career he would like, as if the whole world was his for the choosing. Once, he answered me without fearing tombstones or cages or the hands from a father, the hands of my lover yesterday. Praised my whole body, made angels from my lips. Ave Maria, full of grace, he propped me up like the roof of a cathedral in New York City. Before we opened the news and read about people who think two brown queers cannot build cathedrals, only cemeteries. And each time we kiss, a funeral plot opens. In the bedroom I accept his kiss, and I lose my reflection. I'm tired of writing this poem, but I want to say one last word about yesterday. My father called. I heard him cry for only the second time in my life. He sounded like he loved me. It's something I'm rarely able to hear. And I hope, if anything, his sound is what my body remembers first. So thank you to everyone for listening and for joining in the celebration. I'm sorry again that I couldn't be there. Have a good evening. Bye.
That was Christopher Soto, everyone. And let's give it up for Jay Chavez, Andrea Asaf, Francisco Aragon, JP Howard. Whew. So Christopher's book, Sad Girl Poems, is for sale by Upshur Street Books in the next room, as are books by JP and Francisco and CDs from Andrea, right? And they will sign them for you. We are very lucky to have an increasing number of independent bookstores back in DC, and one of them is Upshur Street Books. So please go and buy the books, give them as gifts. I do this thing now where I like push books. I'm like, book, it's an ancient art form. It's beautiful. Discover it. So please do. Also, because some Split This Rock staff members have been named over and over again and others not at all, I want to shout out Chelsea Iorlano and Joseph Green, who are the incredible youth program staff for Split This Rock. And not only are we lucky, but the young people of Washington, D.C. are incredibly lucky to have them. And I want to ask you tonight, as you contemplate the critical importance of poetry in our movements for social change, that I hope you'll consider supporting Split This Rock with financial gifts. Yeah. You know, our basic freedoms threatened every day. It means that demands for our work grow. We get 10 requests, 15 a week for collaboration. I mean, it's an extraordinary time. It strains the very small staff. So with more of your support, there could be more of us. Also, as Ken mentioned, and as you all know, the National Endowment for the Arts is under attack. And so for those of you who don't live in the district, I hope you'll go home and contact your representatives and remind them that the NEA costs 46 cents per American per year. And yet it gives grants in every congressional district in the country, including a very important grant to Split This Rock to support both our youth and our adult programming. So, but it means that donations from individuals, concerned, committed individuals such as yourself are all the more important. So there are pledge cards on the table. You can also buy some beautiful swag. You know, we got t-shirts and mugs and gorgeous note cards that Kamisha designed with artwork by board chair Dan Vera in the back. Woo! And on the note cards, there are excerpts from poems in Split This Rock's online database, The Quarry. Yeah. They're just stunningly beautiful cards. You're not going to find anything any more beautiful anywhere. Except for, of course, the poets you heard from tonight. So buy them. But also, you can give online, of course, or take home a pledge card, or write a check tonight. Damn it. I also want you to grab a flyer for a series of events complementing the Climate Justice March coming up next weekend and the Science March tomorrow. Yes, over the next week, Split This Rock is going to be presenting readings and open mics and workshops and poetry placards to carry in the marches. So please grab that flyer. And also one of our premier youth programs, Louder Than a Bomb, DMV, is over the next month. So we've got flyers for that as well. We're here till 9 o'clock. The bar is still open. Buy some books and some swag. I want to give a huge thank you again to the Arts Club of Washington and all the staff there here. To Bus Boys and Poets, the Institute for